Good afternoon or morning for some of you. On behalf of Stellenbosch University International and Ocean Hub Africa, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's live webinar. My name is Linton Francois Berger, and I'm an ocean impact investor and business mentor based in Cape Town, South Africa. I'm also the author of the novel She Down There, published by Penguin Random House, a book about being in love with the ocean. But today, we're going to hear from people who share a particular love of a very special, in fact, critical part of the sea, the group of sea creatures who are essential to maintaining healthy oceans. I'm talking about the apex predators of the ocean, our sharks. But sharks are in trouble, and we are the problem. Every year, we indiscriminately kill millions of sharks for our fish and chips and for their fins, for shark fin soup, of all things, which has no nutritional value whatsoever. And we're killing them off on our swimming beaches, in nets, alongside many other marine species, such as dolphins, turtles, manta rays, and whales, and on baited hook drum lines, in a really ineffective attempt to protect the beaches where there have been accidental shark bites. For we now know that without any doubt that sharks are not on the menu. We are not on the menu, I should say. They're not interested in eating us. So this has got to change. And the good news is that there is a better way. And this is what we're going to explore today. First, we're going to hear from Dr. Sara Andreotti, a shark researcher from Stellenbosch University and the co-founder of about a shark-friendly alternative to keeping sharks and people apart at our beaches. And then we're going to meet two ecotourism operators whose businesses benefit from bringing people and sharks together in their natural environment, because sharks are really magnificent in their natural environment, and they're beautiful to get to know. And they're worth many orders of magnitude more alive than they are dead. So we're very pleased to have Walter Bernardus with us. Walter owns the African Water Sport Diving Centre in Kamas, near Durban on the KwaZulu-Natal coast. And then we've got Mike Norkier, owner of Pisces Divers here in Cape Town. And then finally, we're going to hear from Alexi Groskopf, who's the co-founder of the Ocean Hub Africa, about how this initiative is supporting and growing the wave of entrepreneurs looking to make a positive impact on our oceans. And after we've heard what they've had to say, there'll be time for your questions. Please keep your mics muted and put your questions in the box on the side, and we'll get to those after the speakers have had their turn. So, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Andreotti to tell us about her award-winning shark safety innovation.
Thank you so much, Linton, and thank you for everyone for being here. As long as I can remember, I wanted to be a marine biologist. I moved to South Africa 11 years ago to investigate white shark number and the genetic profile as part of my PhD study with the University of Stellenbosch. This was the first study of its kind, discovering that back in 2012, only between 300 and 500 great white sharks were left around the South African coastline. The number of white sharks have been plummeting for years, but only recently they became so few that they were reported missing from some aggregation sites, such as in the False Bay. And all sharks are vitally important for maintaining the ecosystem balanced and healthy. But unfortunately, as top predators, they're also the most sensitive to overfishing and climate change, water pollution, and the depletion of their food resources. And on top of these known threats, they're also being targeted to reduce their number as a way to keep surfers and beachgoers safe. There has been an ongoing conflict between human and shark dating back to 1936, when first in Australia, shark nets and baited hooks started being deployed. Then in South Africa in 1950, with the Anti-Shark Measures Board, we started having nets and more recently in Reunion Island and New Caledonia, they started a targeted shark cull to reduce their number to protect surfers. And thousands of sharks get trapped in these shark nets, but together with them also turtles and whales and harmless animals, which is why with my colleague, we started working on the development of the Shark Safe Barrier, which is the first eco-friendly and shark-specific product designed to keep large sharks separated from surfers and swimmers. It biomimics a thick forest of kelp that have been largely used by Cape Fur seals to avoid predation from sharks. And this visual appearance is merged with strong magnets, which overpower a very sensitive electromagnetic sense that shark has around their nose and eye. We developed this barrier since 2012, and we successfully tested it with 63 white shark in South Africa, 48 bull shark in the Bahamas, using baits to lure them through it, and then recording their behavior using the underwater camera. And in all the tests, we never had a white shark nor a bull shark crossing these pipes. Internationally patented, we exported 200 units in Reunion Island in January 2019. And it took only 9 days and 4 of us divers to install all of these 200 units in a square shape so that the local from Reunion Island could test it. And since then, these units did not require any maintenance and formed a stunning artificial reef that other animals started being utilizing. So basically is a product designed to withstand harsh sea conditions. It proved to require minimal maintenance and solves 3 problems at once: the human safety concern associated with the shark accident, the ongoing ecology issue associated with shark nets, but also the loss of tourism revenue in coastal areas that are inhabited by sharks. So the challenge we have now is that bringing change to a world in general can be one of the most difficult things to do. And what we are trying to do now is to globally revolutionize the shark-human relationship, which is not an easy task. On the bright side, we've never been that close to make this a reality because this shark safe barrier proved to be robust. We already received several requests from overseas installation. So it is my hope that these will become the new standard to solve the shark-human conflict, but also a tool to promote a more sustainable coexistence between human and our ocean. I also believe that to make a big wave and create a big change, we do need a lot of drops. So we are at the forefront of it, but I think that you guys that now tune in to listen to this webinar are also going to become part of the change and help to fix this problem. So please become ambassador for this beautiful animal. Talk to people that don't like sharks and tell them how important these animals are for the ecosystem, because it's a fight against time and we basically need all the support we can get. So thank you for listening today, and the University of Stellenbosch, VIDA, Ocean Hub Africa, for organizing the webinar and put us in touch with you all. And with that, I'll give it back to Linton.
Fascinating, Sarah. Thank you very much. I know there'll be a lot of questions coming out of your short presentation, and we'll take those after everyone's had a go. Say before we move on to Walter that the timing of this event is really fortuitous, because a lot of people in South Africa would have seen the 50/50 program last night, spoke about the great whites in False Bay and the whole interaction of great whites along our coast with orcas and other sharks. And also, I know, Sarah, you feature in the Australian documentary called Envoy, which is coming out shortly. So people can watch out for that. So on to our next speaker, which is Walter up in KwaZulu-Natal. Walter, tell us about your relationship with sharks in that part of the world where sharks are very prominent, obviously, in the ecosystem.
Thanks very much. As you all know, my name is Walter Bernardus, and the owner of African Water Sports. We started diving with sharks in the late 80s and basically pioneered bringing divers into contact with the apex predators, tiger sharks, Zambesis, your bull shark, and the sardine run, where there's a host of sharks that come in to enjoy that smorgasbord of sardines that comes up our coastline. Our main goal has been to change attitudes and perceptions towards sharks, getting divers to get in the water with sharks and to realize that they are not these predators that are going to take you to pieces, and they've got their place in the ecosystem. Over the years, we've seen a steady decline in our tiger shark population, and the Natal Sharks Board has been the main contributor of this, and they have been installing gill nets on our coastline, which on some beaches are 2.5 kilometers long and 6 meters deep, and also known as curtains of death, so that any animal that puts its head in that gill net ends up dying. So they have been catching apex predators like great whites, tigers, and the bull sharks, but also a host of bycatch that has really brought a lot of pressure on them to revise the system into a something that's a little bit has less of a bycatch than their present system, and that's been the drumlines. The drumlines basically is a big buoy with that's been anchored to the seabed, has a big hook, and bait is baited every week. So it's a very active system, and it takes a big toll on our shark population, because you can imagine whereas the nets are a passive system, these are actually attracting the sharks to that area. So a great white could be swimming past, no interest in going into that bathing beach, but because of the chum line or the scent that's coming off those drum lines, is attracted in, or it could have caught a harmless shark, a little dusky, or a one of those milkies, something like that, and the vibration those sharks are giving off while they thrashing on that hook brings in a big tiger or a big Zambezi or even a great white, and they end up getting caught on these nets as well. It's so refreshing to hear, because we've never had an alternative for the Natal Sharks Board, and it's so refreshing to see that we have got a system that works, as in the Shark Safe Barrier, and we need to get behind this so that we can save our oceans and save our sharks. I think that's all from my side.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Walter. And I know there'll be some questions for you as well. Let's hand straight over to Mike Nokia, who's in Simonstown. Many of you will have seen the movie My Octopus Teacher, which is trending globally. And Mike has the good fortune of knowing that environment that the movie was shot in, and will tell us a bit more about it now. Over to you, Mike. But Mike, why don't you just talk us through what makes the kelp bed so special, and the importance of sharks in for your business and in that ecosystem?
Certainly. Well, we are fortunate, as you pointed out, to be located along the stretch of coastline which is fringed with dense kelp beds, home to many shark species, but not just shark species. I mean, we're sitting in a biodiversity hotspot in Cape Town. I don't know if you aware of the Bio Blitz competition that's running at the moment, whereby Southern Hemisphere cities are challenged to upload as many photos of species, both marine and terrestrial, as possible. And last year, Cape Town won by a mile. So our biodiversity, not just above water but below water, is something really special. So the kelp forests are very much part of that, and we, as a dive center, started really operating along with the traditional things that dive centers do. We in terms of training and retail and servicing and running charters, we started finding that what was really popular was diving with animals. And the first animal that we really started operating with was the Cape fur seal. And we're lucky to have a seal haul out at Smithsvinkels Bay, where we can reliably dive with seals or snorkel with seals year round. It's surrounded by a beautiful reef as well. And then we'd typically pair that with a second dive after a break to wrecks or deeper reefs. And more often than not, we'd find ourselves coming to the shallow kelp forests and just looking for specific animals in that kelp forest. And the area between Castle Rocks and Pyramid Rock, we'd often find the spotted galley sharks. And it was on one memorable dive in around 2007, where we dropped our shot line in a different area in the sandy channel a little bit north of the Pyramid Rock reef structure, and we came across the broad-nosed seven-gill shark, which we'd never seen before, but which we soon came to realize aggregated there in numbers. You'd sometimes have 5 or 6 sharks and sometimes upwards of 20. And it really presented an amazing opportunity to bring novice divers up close to an apex predator in a non-heightened state. I mean, they occurred there naturally. We weren't chumming or baiting for them. So they were very relaxed, and they would literally swim arm's length away from divers. So even junior, divers who'd just done a handful of dives could go there and kneel on the sand and enjoy seeing these apex predators swim right up to them. So it became a big part of our product, much like the white sharks were a real flagship species for False Bay. As a small dive center, diving with seals, and then the seven gills became our top product. And then around about 2015, 2016, we noticed that the numbers of seven gills were declining, and there'd be sometimes big gaps between sightings. And we gradually realized that a big shift had happened. What was happening is that the white sharks were leaving the bay, and the white shark operators at Seal Island were seeing fewer and fewer white sharks. And that was being driven, we realized, by the virtual collapse of a large component of the white shark diet, which is the smoothhorn shark and the soupfin shark, which are being caught inshore on those sandy areas, Macassar, Strandfontein, and form a large part of the white shark diet. So they slowly started leaving the bay and being replaced by the seven gill, which was quite happy to fill the breach and become the apex predator at Seal Island. And now, as a result of that shift, we're not seeing seven gills at Miller's Point, and the white shark operators aren't seeing white sharks, but they're seeing seven gill sharks coming up to their cages. So yeah, quite a dramatic shift. And while we still able to and are delighted to be able to offer a number of other smaller shark species in the kelp forest, we mentioned the spotted galley shark. We also have the striped cat sharks, the short-tail rays. There's a striped cat shark on your screen. Short-tail rays, even down to the tiny species like the leopard shy sharks and the puff adder shy sharks, which you can see on virtually every dive in the kelp. So we really hope that things shift and we're able to see our seven gills re-aggregate, but in order for that to happen, we need the white sharks to return and displace them from the island. And in order for that to happen, the stocks of the inshore species which have been hammered need to recover, and that's going to require serious management and intervention. So yeah, that's my story, and we look forward to welcoming you to the kelp forest and showing you the species that are there in the absence of the seven gill shark. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Mike. Very inspiring. And, you know, for anyone who has dived and experienced sharks underwater, they just really are magnificent creatures. They're graceful, highly evolved, and you begin to realize that they're not there to eat you. And you know, and you start developing a relationship with them as a diver. And I think more and more of us are doing that and realizing just how special they are. And learning how important they are in the ecosystem. You know, they maintain balance in the natural ecosystem, and we just have to have them alive for healthy oceans. I want to bring in the business side now. So Alexi, you've been very busy setting up an ocean impact hub in Cape Town that supports entrepreneurs in the blue economy. Tell us more about what you're up to and just what is this hype all about around the blue economy, and tell us how entrepreneurs are are getting involved to solve the problems that we have caused with our oceans.
Thanks, Clinton. I think the best example of an entrepreneur is Sarah, for example. She's obviously has developed something that is amazing, that deserves to become a new standard. I'll tell you more about what Ocean Hub Africa is, and I'll try to respond to your different points, Clinton. Ocean Hub Africa is an accelerator that focuses on the acceleration of the development and the adoption of ocean-minded solutions. So we are looking at impact for profit businesses that have an innovative technology that can scale, that have a nice product market fit, market potential, and that addresses three of the main challenges that the oceans are facing today, namely your ocean overexploitation, ocean pollution, and the effects of global warming on the ocean. So Shark Save Barrier is a very good example of this. What we do with those startups in Africa is trying to leverage an ecosystem of different partners and stakeholders, your authorities, the research centers and the universities, the NPO, the foundations, the ocean businesses in general, and obviously the investors. And we're trying to take those businesses to investor readiness and market readiness, essentially. As they grow their impact, their business, they will grow their impact. That's really the mission that we've set out for Ocean Hub Africa. Now, obviously, within the ocean economy, ocean tourism is a big thing, right? Your coastal and marine tourism is very important. It's your sunbathing, drinking mojito, your diving, your ocean safaris and whatnot. But within the realm of sustainable ocean economy, the blue economy, what we're trying to achieve is to help new technologies, new solutions, ocean solutions, to help develop a new model that enables environmental and climate resilience that will integrate within the local economies and that will generate economic and social benefits, but within the finite resources of the ecosystem it evolves in, right? The seascape that it leverages as an ocean tourism activity. And obviously this has to be done within the, by enhancing the traveler's experience, but also the residents' well-being. So it's the tourism that we've known up until now, but with a more collaborative and regenerative approach to it. That's what really is kind of ecotourism or tourism within the realm of the blue economy, as far as I'm concerned. So why would this be more important today? Why would people and countries in particular need to invest in this? Well, I think ocean tourism, a decade ago, so it's an old figure, but it's been growing steadily ever since, at least until 2019, was worth something like $400 billion annually. It's massive, and it was supported by something like 7 million jobs in 2010, and it's been growing ever since. So obviously it's interesting for investors and countries to invest in. It has a lot of market value and it generates a lot of jobs. But as the value, the economic and the tourism value of those marine environment sort of increases, so does the pressure on the natural resources. So if tourism starts degrading the ecosystem onto which it depends, then the local economy, the culture and the environment are impacted, obviously. And Obviously, also the fact that last year and still going today, this year started in December last year, the COVID-19 related crisis has sort of beaten up harshly coastal tourism, and the whole industry calls for more investment and people to get involved. But now the rebuilding of the whole sector will require a new vision for the different stakeholders, including the countries, but also the key players such as the dive centers and other people that can bring ocean solutions such as Shark Safe Buyer, need to take into account the sustainability as a new standard. It's the new norm, and that also applies for people and customers around ocean tourism. So the investment is required, but a lot has changed recently, and it's a good thing. That's kind of where we're playing in as Ocean Hub Africa. It's that ocean health and ocean wealth, for that matter, actually has become a top priority in most of political agendas internationally, which is great, and that's thanks to two main triggers. I think last year the IPCC report helped a lot on the state of the ocean, was quite alarming and sort of awakened a lot of policymakers. And the fact that next year will be the start of the UN Decade of the Ocean, whilst the Sustainable Development Goal 14, life below water, that's the one that is closely linked up to the ocean, has been the most overlooked since the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, were published. So this wake-up call has allowed for concrete changes that we hope we're contributing at Ocean Hub Africa. And namely, you'll have the acceleration of science-driven conservation efforts, and Shark Safe Buyer is an example. Biodiversity conservation and building climate resilience are two very important things that are really taken with a scientific approach, which is great. There's been an increased local stakeholder engagement and promotion of co-management with the communities. And there's more and more innovative finance mechanism that will accelerate the development and adoption of hopefully more ecotourism solutions. So there's been a lot of change. It's exciting. There's still a lot to be done. And the problems that are being faced by dive centers on both sides of the African oceans, as we've just heard, require needs to be more heard for people to take actions, and solutions like Shark Safe Buyer needs to be spread and adopted faster, sort of match the pace and scale of the ocean challenges, essentially. So a lot of work, but it's in the right it's going in the right direction. It's exciting times for us.
Thanks very much, Alexi. So we've got this innovative solution that has come out of Stellenbosch University and that you are now incubating at the Ocean Hub Africa. Yet we're still seeing shark nets and drumlining as a preferred, so-called solution to keeping people and sharks apart where there's risk. So we want to explore this a bit more and find out, what we can do, what viewers can do, what general public can do to change this, because it's clearly, not sustainable and it's not the best method. And we've got a question that relates to that from Joe Halford, and it's directed at SARA, but I want to ask the other two dive operators their perspective on this question as well. And the question reads, Sarah, from your experience so far, do you think that Shark Safe Buyer will be proactively taken up by those in charge of beaches? Or will it require legislation by governments to enforce a more sustainable solution to shark-human interactions on beaches? And then finally, what is your strategic plan for these two scenarios? So just a great question there that really captures, I think, the essence of the conversation. So let's just get your perspective on the Sarah, and then I'll direct the question to the two dive operators as well.
Thank you. That is a great question, and as long as the more I've been working on the Shark Safe Buyer, the more I started realizing that government in general hate to change their way, because they've been doing something that way for so long that to take the chance of doing something different is really not in their portfolio, unless there is enough public pressure and enough demand for a change, that then changing becomes the easier thing to do, is the natural decision. So to reply to your question, I guess is both are true. We need to have ongoing requests to change the way we manage sharks around beaches. I also need to remind that shark nets and these baited hooks do not keep sharks separated from people. So they're not effective in protecting surfers. They're effective in reducing the number of sharks, because the concept is the least the sharks, the least the chances of shark encountering people. So if enough people will change their perspective about it and ask for that to stop, I trust government will implement legislation that will go with it and change their way. And diving center like Mike and Walter one brings people to see shark with their own eye and not through a screen, not through a Hollywood editing that wants to show sharks as the villain of the situation. So to go and meet these animals or learn more about them, I think is the first step, because we like to protect what we care for and we care for what we know. So diving centers are the best tool to get people in touch with these animals. Then you promote these more, people start liking them, and legislation will change.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thanks, Sarah. Now, just, you know, can I ask Walter first and then Mike, you know, what can people do to change attitudes towards sharks? You know, what needs to happen for us to shift to a more shark-friendly and eco-friendly alternative to keeping our beaches safe? Walter?
Sure. Yeah, not an easy question to answer, but we've got to change the attitude of people towards sharks, and that is by, you know, having the same attitude that people have got towards whales, dolphins, turtles. You know, if you kill one of those, there's a massive uproar, and if you kill a shark, you hardly a beep on the radar. You know, so we need people to realize that sharks are a very essential part of our ecosystem, and the livelihood of our oceans depend on their existence. So in changing the attitudes of people, we only bring us a very small number of people into contact with sharks in the general scheme of things. And I'm not sure how to get the message across to all the dolphin and whale lovers out there to take up, be ambassadors of shark protection as well. But we've somehow got to do that. It's too late to educate our children, because by the time they're adults and can have an impact, maybe it's too late. We need to do what exactly the answer is and how we do it, I'm not 100% sure. But we are doing our little part. We are taking people out there. We're changing attitudes every day, and that word of mouth goes out. And now that we have this alternative, you know, we can show people that there is a safer way for the shark and the human to enjoy the resource of the ocean together without wiping one another out. So, yeah, not an easy question to answer.
No, and obviously people, especially people who are qualified as divers, can come and dive with you there in Kumasi. And you know, I would encourage people, now that we are allowed to travel and get underwater, that they support operations like yours and yours, Mike. You know, so if you are a qualified diver, get down there and go and see what makes sharks special. And if you're not a qualified diver, get qualified. So Mike, what's your take on what people can do to change attitudes towards sharks?
Well, to echo something Sarah said right at the beginning of the presentation, I mean, I think your divers are your ambassadors for shark species, and then any diver that comes and participates in a dive, just experiencing it, the message needs to be brought across explicitly that sharks are very much vital, and to see them is a very special thing and a privilege. And the fact that they're in such a precarious state. So I think, and from a human psychological point of view, we're comfortable and feel safe behind a screen, which is going to form a mesh between us and the sharks. And we need to educate people about how that's not true. Something like the Shark Safe Barrier, which isn't going to kill a single marine organism, is just as effective as a barrier. And why those initiatives should be supported, and really lobbying government and the Department of Environmental Affairs to take seriously the alternatives out there and move from their fixed way of thinking, which, as Walter pointed out earlier, has been in existence for so many decades. The technology is there. It's been proved in the field at Dyer Island for many years, and Reunion at the pilot project. And divers need to become ambassadors for the new technology and to shout it from the mountaintops. And we all have a sphere of influence as individuals. Everyone knows who dives and who enjoys the ocean, whether you're a surfer or a diver. And spreading the message on an individual level and on the platforms we all have is an important way to start educating people about the real value of sharks.
Can I just add here, Linton? Just very quickly, without even being, I'm a diver myself, but without even being a diver, people need to understand that if they're not divers but fish eaters, sharks are very important, because sharks are keeping on check the predators of salmon, tunas, cod, and all of those fish that we love to have on our plate. So if we lose the number of sharks that we have today, there will be an increase in the number of seals and dolphins and whatnot, which is nice because we can dive with them, as we heard earlier. But these will eat and deplete all of the nice fish that we love to have on our plate. So the ecosystem, the whole ecosystem, as you've probably heard many times, is very fragile. It's every single player, maybe except for mosquitoes on land, but other animals are all very important. And removing or disturbing this balance will have dramatic consequences further down the line. It's a butterfly effect. So it's important to conserve sharks, to preserve that ecosystem, and to keep us, to allow us to keep on having nice little fish on our plate. It's very important. You don't even need to be a diver to understand this, even though diving is definitely a good way to become an ambassador.
Yeah, and following on from that, I think, one of the things that all of us can do is to become more aware of what we eat. And so, when we order fish and chips, to actually find out what fish that is that we're eating. And we should not be eating sharks. And obviously, don't ever buy shark fin soup. It's not doing any good for you, and it's doing a lot of harm to sharks. So these are obvious and simple things that each of us can do. So I want to thank Joe Halford for that original question, and just interesting, Joe sitting in the UK. So thank you, Joe. And then we've got a follow-up question along this line of changing mindsets around nets in particular. And JP Buerta has pointed out that the legislation is already there. It just needs to be applied, according to him. So I want to bring this question to you, Sarah, and just, so what is the situation? Dolphins, whales, turtles are protected. And in fact, great whites are protected, as I understand it. Ragged tooth sharks, I'm pretty sure, are protected in KwaZulu-Natal. So there is this legislation, but what's the loophole? Why are they getting special permits to actually kill these endangered species?
JP Botha is dead right. The legislation for South Africa is in place, but KwaZulu-Natal Shark Boards gets a special exemption, ironically from the same department that is there to protect the marine life. And the special exemption is given on the premises that humans have the right to protect themselves, and there isn't an alternative available, which was true until we started working on the barrier, I might argue. And it is, again, a matter of mindset. The mindset that we can kill marine life as much as we wish, because the ocean is a limited resource of animals and food and biodiversity. But we are seeing with our eye that that's not the case. There was a study done globally with this underwater camera with bait attached to it that deployed this underwater camera globally and found out that in 90% of the areas there were not the amount of biodiversity for sharks that was used to be. So the change and the decline that Walter pointed out, the change in the ecology and how these animals are moving elsewhere is happening under our eye. And yet there are organizations that get an exemption for keep on killing them legally. So personally, I don't want to put KwaZulu-Natal Shark Board out of job. I want them to keep on working, but on different technologies. So they should remove the nets, remove the baited hooks, and implement other systems. And whether that is going to be the shark safe barrier or some exclusion net that just protects surfers, and you need to put it out in the morning, take it back in the evening, like the one in fish hooks, or drone, whatever they want to use, but for what they're using now, which is killing the marine life, will be appreciated. And JP is dead right. The legislation is there, but needs to be applied, and this exemption should not be given. Or they could just say they're allowed to operate, but they're not allowed to kill anything, which will stop the purpose of having these nets in the first place.
Great. We've had a message from Helen, who works at the Two Oceans Aquarium, which, as we all know, is a world-class institution and is doing incredible work to educate and make people aware of the beauty and diversity and the risks that our oceans face. And she writes that, I'm just going to read her message, said, "This is a great conversation, as it is exactly what we're investigating here at the Two Oceans Aquarium for an exhibit on sharks." So that's great to hear, Helen. We look forward to that new exhibit. Trying to find out the key message we need to get across to the public and what people can do to protect them. Definitely a case of seeing these animals in real life and then hopefully wanting to protect them once they realize just how incredible these animals are and how diverse. Not all sharks are great white sharks, and even great whites, Helen, as we all know, are pretty amazing. So staying in the V&A waterfront, which is where the Two Oceans Aquarium is based, and in fact, in the same building is the Ocean Hub Africa, where Alexi lives and works, where he works, not lives. I wanted to just shift the conversation back to the business side and just explore small business and, ocean-based business as a change vector. So, obviously, if you've got a viable solution like Sarah has with Shark Safe Barrier, and investors get involved and support the business as a viable, profitable, enterprise, that also drives change. You've now got, that commercial muscle, if you like, and that commercial energy to drive change. Just talk a little bit to us about how businesses can drive change in the right direction.
Sure. There's a very simple, and it speaks to what GP Botha actually said earlier. There's a very simple fact that if you look at the main drivers of change, you'll find your policymakers, regulators, and the people, right? So there's a lot of different organizations that are focusing on the B2G level, trying to lobby the governments, trying to change the regulations. Should it be through lobbying, actually, or science-based, reasoning and promotion of new regulations? And you'll have your B2C level, business to customer level, of organizations trying to shift people behavior and educate them, raise awareness and whatnot. These are very important because they incentivize the change, but they do not yield a change, right? If government says, okay, we're banning single-use plastics from now on, and if people say, you and I would think, okay, I'm not going to use any more single-use plastics, and we don't have a business coming with a solution for your supermarkets to remove plastic off the shelves, then the change is not actually happening. It's not being implemented. This is why solutions are very important. Now, why startup in particular? Startup is just a generic word to say something new, right? You starting up. And the reason why things have to be new today and we have to rethink and improve what's been going on up until now is that I believe, at least, that there's been a shift in the definition of what progress is. Right? Progress used to be something restricted to economic value and social benefits. And as I mentioned earlier, now it's still true, but there's a new parameter into the equation, which is the environmental footprint. Yes, there needs to be economic value for progress to happen. There needs to be social benefits, but this must be taken into account within the finite resources of our ecosystem. We must bear in mind the environmental footprint of our actions. If that is not the case, then we're not talking about progress. And because there's been a whole change of this definition, changes the paradigm completely, we need startups to fast track the changes that we need, right? We need to change. And we've seen in the past that startups are disruptive. They bring about the change more rapidly. And we know that we're running out of time today, hence why solutions must be coming from very fast and agile, disruptive companies, which we often refer to as startups. If that answers your question, Linton. Good reflex.
I want to talk about your business a bit more, Sarah. And we've had a question from Antoine Demasson from Agence France Presse, I presume in France. She says, hi, Sarah, what's the impact or effect on other marine animals, especially big ones like dolphins, etc.? And I'm going to take the question to mean, does your solution have any impact on other species? That may not have been the question, but I'm taking it to mean that. And so just tell us a bit more about how SharkSafe works. You gave us a brief overview in your presentation, but so just as a recap, we've got this sort of artificial, if you like, barrier of kelp, lookalike kelp stems. I often think of them as noodles or PVC pipes. And just take us through. Yeah. Can you see the screen? I can. We can see your screen. So over to you. Tell us how that works, and does it impact other marine species in any way?
So first of all, you can see we tried to biomimic the appearance of a thick forest of kelp. So what we have here is multiple rows of pipes that are made up of HDPE plastic, which we can recycle and can be built from recyclable plastic. And only the outside row, the one in red in the schematic, has very strong magnet inside. And these magnets don't need a power source. They are like your fridge magnet, but on steroids. It's very large magnet. And we have 1 per meter in the pipe. So to create magnetic fields that overwhelms the electric system of the sharks. That's why it is shark specific. Only these sharks and rays and chimera has the ampullae of Lorenzini, the magnetic and electric sense to detect these fields. So this barrier is shark specific. Every other animals can swim through it like they will do on natural kelp. In fact, in Dyer Island, where we tested this barrier with the white shark, we had the Cape Fur seals swimming through it like they will do with natural kelp, making us jump from time to time because they're really curious. So they come and watch what we are doing while we were looking at the installation and the design. But it is shark specific, and it is the only solution at the moment in the market, which is only keeping sharks away. And I would be lying if I say that it has no effect whatsoever on the other animals. The effect this barrier has is enhances the local biomass. In other words, we create, by putting these pipes, attaching them on anchorage system, we create in time an artificial reef. So the effect of an artificial reef is to give the local community of fishes and seaweeds and now sea urchin, whatever is already there, a new surface to grow and thrive and get more food, because now they have a clean surface to build on. So that is the effect that the barrier will have. Increase the local biomass, keep the sharks out of the area, and keep them away from the surface, because we can build these in 8 or 10 meter deep water.
Okay, so these are in fact what we call FADs, right? Fish aggregating devices.
Yes.
So,
like in Japan, they're using them for increasing the fishery, funny enough.
And do you think, can I just ask the 2 dive operators, you know, do you think divers would like to swim and visit these barriers? I mean, it would be a nice addition to an outing, right? To actually go and have a look at this solution and, you know, get to dive on the right side of it, I imagine, on the beach side, and you know, and have a look at you know, what it's attracting. Do you think it would work as an attraction, Walter?
Well, because it's like very close to the surf line in, I would say, about 8 meters of water, it's quite easy to dive, and the biodiversity that it's attracting is going to be amazing. So the nets, you know, generate a bit of interest from the divers already, but I think that this kind of system would also create quite a lot of interest amongst the divers. We would also have to have a look at, you know, the damage that the current system is doing to our environment, and the benefits of this system, and explain the 2 systems to our divers, which would create a lot of interest and feedback to the authorities for sure.
And what's your perspective on this question, Mike?
Well, I've been lucky enough to actually dive in the pilot project at Dyer Island one day a few years ago with Sarah. She took me out there, and I must say it was quite something diving in that area, knowing that there were white sharks patrolling around, and we, you know, the boat took us and dropped us in the middle of this array. And we dropped down, and Sarah was busy setting up some baited cameras to, you know, to do a sampling and testing with. So, yeah, I've got first-hand experience of diving in it, and I think where, you know, my mind was quite preoccupied with what was going on outside the barrier, but we didn't see any white sharks that day. But I think in the Cape Town context, you know, I would imagine if these get deployed in shallow sandy areas, lots of light, I could imagine them being populated very, very quickly and just forming a very interesting dive in shallow water that would yield a number of species that have, you know, inhabited them. So I really think that it could be something. I mean, I know some of the work that Sarah's got going on in Glen Ken, one of her challenges is actually that there's almost too much life that gets onto them. She called it biofouling, where the marine plants actually have to be cleaned off the noodles or the stems. And yeah, I think that is a challenge in Cape Town. But as a dive, I think it could be a really interesting dive and a great conversation starter for divers to understand what it is and the fact that it's populated but nothing's trapped and not a single death has been caused.
Yeah, I'm not going to respond that because I'm biased. I think it's amazing to dive next to it. It's full of fishes. And Mike was making a good point about the cleaning of the biofouling. We have these seaweed that grow, but they grow differently depending where we are installing. For instance, the pipes you saw from Reunion Island have been there for now more than a year and a half, and they only have a very small amount of seaweed and coralligenous seaweeds and corals that started growing because they haven't been cleaned on purpose to see how long do they resist. Where if we have to put it in area like False Bay, where you have these large green seaweed that start growing on them, then you need an ongoing cleaning system, which is job creation at the end. So it's not a bad thing, but we will have to tailor suit that for every beach and every area, which is also part of the fun, I guess.
I think shark diving in a shark safe barrier cage is a lot more exciting than in a metal cage.
Oh yes.
I would definitely.
And they can also, and I know divers, they're going to stay inside for like 5 minutes, and as soon as they see a shark outside, they're going to look and to take the picture.
Great. I'm going to ask the panel to wrap up, and just in order that you spoke, to give us a last few words, just last thoughts that we can give the viewers on the topic, take-home messages, you know, anything that you haven't said to us. Starting with you, Sarah.
Yes. Do we want to respond to this anonymous person who asked about genetics study that links the shark biting? Yes, I read this study. So that study was saying when a person gets a negative encounter with a shark, if he gets a bite, we could collect the saliva from the bite and extract the DNA from it and trying to link that to the individual shark responsible. I read the study and there are a couple of issues with that. The first, personally, is a moral issue. Do we want to go out there and hunt predators in their own environment because it bite one of us that was swimming in their environment? I think that is at the base of all the shark net and baited hooks principle. We get hurt, so we want to hurt the animals back, and we should try to move away from that principle and that mindset. Then, logistically speaking, what you're asking, what this paper was setting up as a plan, is to collect the DNA from a shark bite. Then, with the DNA, you need to have enough of it to not just understanding which species bite the person, but also which individual within the species have been biting the person. So you normally need a lot more than a bit of saliva. But the genetic technology is improving, so maybe we can assume you can get it down to the individual. But then at that stage, you will need a way. It's like the FBI. If you have the fingerprint of someone, but you don't have a database of fingerprints, you'll never match the fingerprint with the individual. So once you have the DNA, but if you don't have a database of who is who, you can never match it back. And then even if you do have that, how are you going to find this poor animal? So logistically is really far-fetched. And morally, I think we should move away from that entirely and start looking at shark accidents for what they are. Really bad, really traumatic, is a tragedy when that happened, but is not the shark's fault. So we should be the species that takes a step back and say, let's put that in context and not go out there and randomly play Jaws with the ocean. So, okay, so you want me to wrap it up, and
Sarah, just a quick perspective on that question. You know, we've probably all seen the lists of things that kill people every year around the world, and shark bites, they're not attacks, shark bites are really low on the list. And yet we have this childish and outdated attitude to dealing with it. You know, there are more people killed with coconuts falling on our heads around the world, but we don't go and chop down all the coconut trees, you know, on a particular island just because someone got killed by a coconut. And there are more people killed by hippos and coconuts and crocodiles and falling fridges than there are by shark bites. So we have this outdated Jaws-driven fear of one of the most beautiful group of animals on the planet. You know, they're up there, obviously, with lions and tigers on the land. So we really need to drive a shift in attitude, and I think that is happening with the beautiful documentaries that are coming out. And as people dive underwater at the dive shops that are represented here today and around the world, and we begin to realize that you know, there's great beauty and great things to learn from these animals, and that they in fact pose no real threat to us. You know, we just need to manage the interaction better, and solutions such as yours you know, need to be implemented so that we're doing that. So just final words from the team. Sarah, anything that you haven't said or I would like to?
I would like to underline once again that here we are among people that are in love for the ocean and for the shark. I mean, Walter literally takes the hook out of the shark's mouth every time you see a shark with a hook on them, because once it rusted, it can, you know, affect the well-being of the animal. So he basically take the shark, put it in tonic immobility to remove the hook one by one. I don't know how many hundreds of hooks he personally took out. We have, you know, Mike that have been taking people down diving to show them sharks for his whole life, and Alexis building up an entire business trying to protect the ocean. So what we should do is, for all the people that are listening and took the time today to listen to us, go and talk to the people that don't care, don't like the shark, never heard of them, or only saw them on Sharknado. You know, this is what is going to bring a real change, because we cannot always talk to the converted. And if people that never took the time to look into that start realizing that it is their problem too if sharks get extinct. Sharks are important for the ecosystem all the way down to the oxygen level on this planet. We are on a blue planet. The majority of our planet is ocean, and these animals are there for balancing the ocean health. So even for someone that really doesn't care, they should actually start caring. And it is for all of the people listening to go out and do their part in getting this message across. So that's all I can say about that.
Thanks, Sarah. Walter?
Well, if we look at the system that we are currently deploying on our coastline, it's protection through eradication. So if they eradicate the primary source of attacks, that is apex predators, then they can't have any shark attacks. It's medieval in concept, and it hasn't changed much, and it's only the lobbying from the whale and dolphin group that have forced them to come up with an alternative system, that's the drum lines, which are even more devastating towards our apex predators. So we know that the nets don't actually work all the time. There have been several shark attacks that have happened in protected beaches. And we need to get the message across to everybody that there is an alternative now. There's a safe alternative, both for the human and the shark. And we need to get the message across of how important the sharks are in our ecosystems. As Sarah said, we are blue planet, and a lot of I think something like 80% of our oxygen comes from the ocean. And if we mess with the balance, and we are messing with the balance every single day by the numbers of sharks that are taken out of our oceans, we're going to mess with our own existence. And we need to get that word out there to spread, to tell everybody how important the ecosystem is and how important it is to keep it balanced. And not just the sharks, everything down the line. It can be the smallest little thing that affects us in the end. So save our sharks. Let's use a more friendly system like the Shark Safe barrier, and let's get those drum lines and curtains of death out of our oceans.
Well put, Walter. Mike, your last few words.
Yeah, my last few words are just to say that here in Cape Town, please go and visit the Two Oceans Aquarium if you haven't already. Become a soulmate, take your kids there. They'll want to go at least once a month. And the volunteers that you meet there and the displays will just, from a young age, teach kids the value of sharks and reinforce it in your own mind. And you'll learn something every single time you go just about sharks, because it's a dynamic display. There's always changes, there's new things happening. Watch my octopus teacher to gain an insight into the kelp forest and why they're so beautiful and so important. And I'm sorry that my presentation didn't work, but I had a beautiful video of the kelp forest and the sharks in it. So yeah, catch that on our website if you can. No, let's not try it again. But I would just like to end off by saying, to my mind, if one really looks at how important sharks are just economically as a tourism resource, people come from all over the world to dive with Walter up in Natal, to come down and see the white sharks in the Cape, to experience the sardine run, and we are blessed with so many species of sharks that it really is our duty to protect them along our coastline. I think South Africa is unique in that we're able to dive with so many species. Here in Cape Town, we've got the pelagic blues and makos that we go out to in the summer months. We've got all the inshore species. We've got the white sharks and the smaller, more discrete species. So we've got so many species. We need to take care of them better, and we need to lobby government to really take care of our fisheries and to make sure that the stocks are not going to collapse as they have done with certain inshore species, to really protect those, because everything's linked, and the huge shift we've just seen in False Bay is a direct result of those collapsing inshore shark stocks. So yeah, to be an ambassador for sharks, speak to people about them, and to get away from fear-based thinking. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Your last words, Alexi?
Yeah, I'll try to take a step back and from a higher level, talk about the oceans economy, the blue economy, the sustainable development of an oceans economy. And I think people need to understand, we need to know more of what are the key problems and issues that oceans are facing, both in a social, environmental, and economic perspective. And there needs to be more resources put into developing new solutions, ocean solutions, new technology and new models that will allow for, for us human as a species to find a sweet spot where both nature and oceans in that instance, and people can thrive together. It's all about equilibrium. It's the balance between the two that everyone should be seeking. And there is a lot of challenges, which means that there are a lot of opportunities. So people need to be aware of this, and there are a lot of players wanting to make a difference. They just need to be more connection of the dots and more awareness as to what are the problems and the resources associated to them, well, I mean, to the solutions that one can come forward with. So we've got a lot of hopes. We are running a little bit out of time. SDG 14, as I said, was the most overlooked of all the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. But if we start doing something now and in the next decade to come, there's a, we'll make it happen as humans have always been able to do. When they all, get focused on one thing, we make it happen. So I'm very hopeful.
Well put. I think, yes, we are at the 11th hour, and I think we will do the right thing. So I just want to wrap up and thank all the speakers. And in doing so, thank the Stellenbosch University International Division and Ocean Africa for hosting this event. I know the Two Oceans Aquarium are going to give this event a shout out, as are the V&A Waterfront. So just a thank you to them. I know there are a lot of Stellenbosch University alumni watching, and I just wanted to thank you for your support. A lot of your donations drive research at the University of Stellenbosch, and this is an example of the incredible work that's coming out of the university and making a real difference to the world out there. Without further ado, I want to thank everyone. This webinar will be available as a recording, so you can spread it on your networks. And with that, a great thank you to everyone for your time, and goodbye.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linton. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.